Building inspector Rachel Torres discovered the impossible basement while conducting her final safety assessment of the Meridian apartments on a humid August morning in 1995. When a routine code compliance inspection revealed structural elements that contradicted every architectural drawing and engineering report associated with the downtown Denver housing project. Standing in what should have been the foundation-level mechanical room, she stared at a heavy oak door that opened onto descending stairs leading to a basement level that simply could not exist according to the building's official documentation. The Meridian apartments represented a significant investment in Denver's urban renewal initiative, a 40-unit complex designed to provide affordable housing while revitalizing a neighborhood that had suffered decades of economic decline. Rachel had reviewed the construction process for 18 months, from initial permits through final occupancy approval, and she possessed intimate knowledge of every aspect of the building's design and implementation. According to the architectural blueprints filed with the city in 1993, the Meridian apartments featured 4 floors of residential units above a ground-level mechanical and storage area that extended exactly 8 feet below street level. The foundation plans showed concrete footings that reached precisely to the building's lowest approved depth, with utilities and structural supports positioned according to engineering specifications that Rachel had personally verified during construction. Rachel's discovery partner was Tom Chun, the building's maintenance supervisor who had been hired by the property management company to ensure that all mechanical systems functioned properly before tenants began moving into their new apartments. Tom had been conducting his own inspection of the heating and electrical systems when he noticed the oak door tucked behind the main furnace unit, partially concealed by ductwork that appeared to have been installed specifically to hide the entrance. The door bore no resemblance to the modern construction materials used throughout the rest of the building. Its heavy oak planks showed the patina and craftsmanship characteristic of late 19th century carpentry, with hand-forged iron hinges and a brass lock mechanism that required an old-fashioned skeleton key. The door's presence in a building completed just 2 years earlier defied logical explanation. Tom had attempted to open the door during his preliminary inspection, but found it secured with a lock that showed signs of recent use despite its antique appearance. The keyhole was free of dust and corrosion, and the hinges moved smoothly when he tested them, suggesting that someone had maintained and accessed the door regularly, even though no building personnel were aware of its existence. Rachel examined the door's position relative to the building's structural elements and realized that the staircase beyond it would extend below the approved foundation depth, creating a basement level that violated city building codes and engineering safety standards. The existence of unauthorized construction beneath the building raised serious questions about structural integrity and potential liability for the property management company. Her initial investigation focused on reviewing all construction documentation to determine whether the basement had been included in early planning stages but omitted from final blueprints due to cost concerns or regulatory issues. She examined every permit application, architectural revision, and engineering modification file during the building's development, finding no reference to basement construction or excavation beyond the approved foundation level. The construction company's records, maintained by foreman Miguel Santos, who had supervised the entire building project, contained no work orders or material receipts related to basement excavation or construction. Miguel had been present during all phases of foundation work and insisted that no construction had occurred below the approved depth. His daily logs, which Rachel reviewed in detail, documented concrete pouring and utility installation exactly as specified in the engineering plans. Rachel realized that understanding the basement's existence required investigating the history of the property before the Meridian Apartments construction. City records revealed that the site had been occupied by the Whitmore boarding house from 1887 to 1954, a three-story wooden structure that had provided temporary housing for workers and travelers during Denver's industrial expansion period. The Whitmore boarding house had been demolished in 1954 following a fire that had killed 11 residents who were trapped in their rooms when flames spread through the building's wooden frame faster than occupants could escape. Fire department reports from that period described the building as a potential safety hazard due to overcrowding and inadequate exit routes. But the investigation had been concluded quickly without determining the fire's exact cause. Tom's research at the Denver Public Library revealed that the Whitmore boarding house had featured a full basement level that served multiple functions during its 67 years of operation. The basement had housed a commercial laundry, storage areas for resident belongings, and during Prohibition, a speakeasy that operated with the knowledge of local authorities who received regular payments to ignore the illegal alcohol sales. The boarding house basement had been the scene of several violent incidents during its operation as an underground saloon. Police records from the 1920s documented 3 deaths that had occurred during fights between customers, including 2 shootings and 1 stabbing that had resulted in lengthy prison sentences for the perpetrators. The basement had also been investigated in connection with several disappearances of individuals who had been seen entering the speakeasy but were never observed leaving. Rachel realized that the oak door and descending staircase might be original elements from the Whitmore boarding house that had somehow survived the 1954 fire and subsequent demolition. The basement level could represent a preserved section of the original building that had been incorporated into the new construction either deliberately or through some form of supernatural preservation. Her investigation took a dramatic turn when she obtained a skeleton key from a local antique dealer who specialized in vintage hardware. The key, manufactured during the 1890s according to its maker's marks, fit perfectly into the basement door's lock mechanism. When Rachel and Tom opened the door for the first time, they discovered that the basement beyond was not an abandoned ruin, but a perfectly preserved speakeasy from the Prohibition era. The basement extended far beyond the footprint of the Meridian apartments, featuring a main bar room with an ornate mahogany bar, round tables surrounded by chairs, and a small stage where live entertainment had once performed for customers seeking illegal alcohol and companionship. The space was illuminated by electric fixtures that functioned despite having no connection to the building's modern electrical system, and the air carried the lingering sense of cigarette smoke and alcohol that had soaked into the wooden fixtures decades earlier. Most remarkably, the basement appeared to be actively maintained despite having been sealed behind the oak door for over 40 years. The bar glasses were clean and arranged in neat rows. The floor showed evidence of recent sweeping, and the tables bore no dust or deterioration that would be expected in an abandoned space. Someone or something had been caring for the speakeasy, preserving it in perfect condition as if expecting customers to return. Rachel documented the basement's layout and compared it to historical maps of the original boarding house, confirming that the preserved space matched the architectural plans filed with the city in 1887. The basement's dimensions, room arrangements, and structural elements corresponded exactly to the original construction, suggesting that this portion of the Whitmore boarding house had survived both fire and demolition through unknown means. Tom discovered evidence of recent activity throughout the basement, including partially filled glasses on the bar, playing cards arranged as if a game had been interrupted, and a guest registry book with entries dated as recently as the previous week. The handwriting in the registry appeared to represent different individuals signing in for evening entertainment, though the names were unfamiliar and the dates seemed to follow no logical calendar system. The most disturbing discovery came when Rachel found a section of the basement that corresponded to the location where violent deaths had occurred during the Speakeasy's operation. This area remained perpetually cold despite the warm August weather, and both Rachel and Tom reported feeling an overwhelming sense of dread and hostility when they approached the space where blood had been spilled during Prohibition-era conflicts. Rachel realized that the preserved basement represented more than historical preservation. It was a continuing manifestation of the violent and illegal activities that had defined its purpose during the 1920s and 1930s. The Speakeasy continued to operate in some form that transcended normal temporal boundaries, serving customers who existed outside the normal flow of time while maintaining its physical presence beneath the modern apartment building. Tom suggested they conduct extended observation of the basement to document any supernatural activity and better understand the nature of the phenomena they had discovered. They established a monitoring schedule that allowed them to visit the basement during different times of day and night, hoping to witness the Speakeasy in active operation and identify the entities that maintained its pristine condition. Their vigil revealed that the basement became most active during the evening hours when the original Speakeasy would have served its customers. Between 9 p.m. and 2 a.m., Rachel and Tom observed translucent figures moving through the space, serving drinks, playing cards, and engaging in conversations that echoed faintly through the preserved barroom. The entities appear to be recreating typical evening activities from the Speakeasy's operational period, unaware that decades had passed since their deaths. The supernatural customers included individuals who had been killed in the basement during violent altercations, continuing to frequent the establishment where they had met their ends. Rachel witnessed what appeared to be the repetitive reenactment of the fatal fights, with victims and perpetrators locked in eternal conflict that played out night after night without resolution or escape from the cycle of violence that had defined their final moments. Rachel's investigation revealed that the preservation of the basement was connected to unfinished business related to the violent deaths that had occurred during the Speakeasy's operation. The entities trapped in the basement were unable to move beyond their final experiences because justice had never been served for their murders, and their deaths had been dismissed by corrupt authorities who protected the illegal establishment in exchange for regular payments. Working with Tom, Rachel researched the specific circumstances surrounding each death that had occurred in the basement, identifying the victims and the individuals responsible for their murders. Many of the killers had escaped prosecution due to police corruption and witness intimidation, leaving the victims without justice and their families without closure. The supernatural preservation of the Speakeasy represented their continuing demand for acknowledgement and resolution. Rachel made the difficult decision to contact the Denver Police Department's Cold Case Division with information about the unsolved murders from the 1920s and 1930s. She presented carefully edited evidence that focused on the historical crimes without revealing the supernatural circumstances of her investigation. Her goal was to encourage official acknowledgement of the injustices that had occurred in the basement and provide some form of recognition for victims who had been ignored by corrupt authorities. The cold case investigation confirmed the identity of murder victims and documented the systematic corruption that had protected their killers from prosecution. While formal charges could not be filed against perpetrators who had died decades earlier, the investigation resulted in official acknowledgement of the crimes and recognition of the victims whose deaths had been covered up by authorities who prioritized illegal profits over public safety. Following the police department's recognition of the historical murders, the supernatural activity in the basement began to diminish. Rachel and Tom observed that the violent reenactments became less frequent and intense. as if the official acknowledgement had provided some measure of justice for victims who had waited nearly 70 years for recognition. The preserved Speakeasy remained intact, but the atmosphere of hostility and unresolved conflict gradually dissipated. Rachel's final building inspection report included detailed documentation of the basement's existence, while carefully omitting references to its supernatural properties. She recommended that the space be incorporated into the building's official plans and maintained as a historical preservation area that acknowledged the site's connection to Denver's Prohibition-era history. The basement was designated as restricted access storage, ensuring that only authorized personnel would encounter the preserved Speakeasy. The Meridian Apartments received final occupancy approval with the understanding that the building contained historical elements that required special consideration and maintenance. Tom was assigned responsibility for the basement's upkeep, ensuring that the preserved space remained secure while respecting its significance as a site where Denver's forgotten victims had finally received the recognition they deserved. Today, the basement that wasn't on blueprints continues to exist beneath the Meridian Apartments, serving as a reminder that some crimes leave impressions that persist until justice is acknowledged, even decades after the perpetrators and their corrupt protectors have died. Rachel has moved on to other projects, but she returns periodically to ensure that the basement remains properly maintained and that the memory of its forgotten victims continues to be preserved with the dignity they were denied in life. This was another tale from the S.T.F. Horror Vault. If you felt the chill tonight, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. New stories open soon. And remember, the vault is always waiting.